The phone was cold against my ear, but my blood was hotter than it had been in years. Where are you? I asked my husband Mark. He didn't answer right away. That was the first lie. The hesitation. After 28 years of marriage, you learn the rhythm of a man's breath. You learn how long it takes him to form a sentence when he's telling the truth, and you learn the pause that means he's building something false in his head. I'm at work, he finally said. Big deposition tomorrow. You know how it is. I knew exactly how it was. I knew because I was standing in our kitchen, the suitcase I dragged through 2 airports still unzipped on the floor behind me. My business trip had ended early. The client CEO had come down with pneumonia and canceled everything. I could have stayed in the hotel and ordered room service and watched bad movies. But I had missed him. I had missed the way the house smelled when he was home. I had missed the sound of his footsteps on the stairs. I had missed the little things that made a marriage feel like a real thing. I had missed a ghost. Because the man on the phone was not my husband. My husband would not have lied to me. I'll be home late, he said. Don't wait up. He hung up. I stood there in the kitchen with the dial tone buzzing in my ear and felt something shift inside me. Not a breaking. A settling. Like the moment before a storm when the air goes still and the birds stop singing. I walked to the study. I opened my laptop. I clicked the credit card app. The alerts lit up the screen like a warning sign on a highway. $487.23. 3 airline tickets to Miami. Departing this evening. 3. Not 2. Not 4. 3. I stared at the number. 3 meant him. 3 meant 2 others. His sister Susan and her husband Tom, who had hated me since the day I married her brother. She had never said it outright. She didn't have to. It was in the way she looked at my clothes, my job, my salary. It was in the way she called my career cute and my ambition a little much for a woman. And Mark had never once corrected her. He had never once defended me. I scrolled down. $234.18. A hotel suite on the waterfront. 2 nights. $89.44. A luxury rental car. $156.32. A dinner reservation at the most expensive steakhouse in South Beach. He was taking his entire family on a trip with my money. My money, earned through 30 years of corporate logistics, through sleepless nights and early mornings, through conference calls and client dinners, through glass ceilings and boardrooms that smelled like old money and men who thought I was a secretary until I opened my mouth. I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had just realized she had been played for a fool and was not going to stay one for a single second longer. I poured myself a glass of water. I drank it slowly. I felt the cold glass against my palm and let it ground me. Then I resolved to end everything. Not in a messy way. I was 57 years old. I had survived hostile takeovers and corporate restructurings and the recession of 2008. I knew how to build a strategy. I knew how to play the long game. And I knew that the most dangerous thing in the world was a patient woman with nothing left to lose. I called Patricia, my lawyer. She answered on the second ring. I need to see you tomorrow morning, I said. It's urgent. She didn't ask for details. She just said, I'll clear my calendar. That was the difference between a good lawyer and a great one. She knew when to ask questions and when to just show up. I called my son Derek in Chicago. He picked up on the first ring. Mom, you're back early? I am, I said. Derek, I need you to listen carefully. Your father and I are going to have some changes. And I need you to be prepared. What did he do? I had raised a perceptive boy. I gave him the truth. Not all of it, but enough. He lied to me. He's been lying for a long time. And I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. Derek was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm coming home tomorrow. No, you don't have to. I'm coming, he said, and there was steel in his voice. I'm not letting you face this alone. That was my son. That was the one good thing that came from that marriage. The rest of it, the house, the bank accounts, the carefully curated life we had built, I was prepared to burn it all down if I had to. I went to bed that night in our king-sized bed, Mark's side empty. He was in Miami by now, drinking a cocktail with his sister, laughing about something. I stared at the ceiling fan and listened to the silence of a house that had felt like a home for 30 years. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a museum. A display of a life that had never quite been real. At 3 in the morning, my phone buzzed. A new credit card alert. $92.50 at a souvenir shop. I didn't check what he bought. I didn't care. The details were irrelevant now. I woke up at 6, made myself a cup of tea, and started planning. Step 1. Secure the financials. Step 2. Gather the evidence. Step 3. Talk to Patricia. Step 4. Execute the exit strategy. I had a job, a good one, with a pension and benefits. I had savings. I had options. Mark had the illusion that he was the head of the household, but he had never been the backbone. I was the one who paid the mortgage. I was the one who kept the retirement fund growing. I was the one who made sure the bills were paid and the insurance was current and the investments were sound. He just drew hearts on calendars and thought that was enough. At 8 in the morning, I walked into Patricia's office. She handed me a cup of coffee and said, "Tell me everything." I did. I didn't leave anything out. The lies, the credit card, the airline tickets, the hotel, the steakhouse, the souvenir shop. I told her about the depositions he claimed to be preparing, the Simpkins case that had been settled for 6 months. I told her about the way he'd been distant, coming home late, claiming to be tired, stopping the little rituals we'd built over the years. The hearts, Patricia said, raising an eyebrow. The hearts on the calendar. What about them? They prove he's a good actor, she said. That's all they prove. I nodded. That's what I thought. Patricia pulled out a legal pad and started writing. We have options. The simplest is divorce on grounds of financial infidelity. Clean, straightforward. But I don't think that's what you want. You're right, I said. I want him to lose sleep. I want his sister to lose her free vacations. I want them to understand that actions have consequences. And I want to walk away with everything I brought into this marriage. Patricia smiled. It was a shark smile. That's going to get ugly. I've been through ugly, I said. I've survived worse. Good. Then let's talk about the fraud. She explained it to me carefully. Using the credit card without my authorization, especially when the card was in my name and I had not consented, could be considered criminal. I could file a police report. I could press charges. That would make things very messy for Mark, especially since he worked in a law firm. He would not be able to keep his job with a pending fraud charge. But are you willing to go that far? Patricia asked. That's a bell you can't unring. I want to have that option on the table, I said. I want him to know I'm holding a gun. Patricia nodded. She made more notes. I'll get the paperwork started. In the meantime, document everything. Screenshots, journal entries, recordings if you can. People trip themselves up in their own words. I left her office feeling lighter than I had in days. The plan was moving. The pieces were falling into place. I drove home. I changed into comfortable clothes. And I started packing his things. Not out of anger. Out of necessity. I wanted him to come home and see the suitcases by the door. I wanted him to understand that he was no longer welcome. But when I picked up his favorite sweater, the one I'd given him for his 50th birthday, the one with the worn elbows and the coffee stain on the sleeve, I felt something crack in my chest. I remembered our wedding day. I remembered how his hands had shaken so badly he almost dropped the ring. I remembered how he'd cried when Derek was born. I remembered my mother's funeral, how he had held my hand through the whole service, never letting go, not even when it was over and we had to walk through the rain to the car. Where did that man go? When did he turn into the one who lied to me on the phone, who used my credit card like a personal slush fund, who let his sister mock me for 2 decades without ever saying a word? I was still standing there, clutching the sweater. When the front door opened. Surprise, Mark said. I dropped the sweater. He was standing in the foyer, suitcase in hand. He looked tanned and relaxed. He looked guilty. Behind him, I could see Susan and Tom lingering awkwardly on the porch, their faces pale, their smiles frozen. We cut the trip short, Mark said. His smile faltered when he saw the suitcases by the door. What's all this? Those are yours, I said. My voice was flat, cold, the voice I used when I was negotiating a deal I knew I would win. Because you're leaving. Tonight. His face drained of color. What are you talking about? I know about Miami, I said. I know about the airline tickets. I know about the hotel. I know about the steakhouse. I know you spent almost $1,000 of my money on your sister and her husband while you told me you were at work. Vivian, I can explain. Explain what that you lied to me, that you took my credit card without asking, that you let your sister think it was funny. Explain any of it. Go ahead. I'm listening. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Susan stepped forward from the porch. Vivian, you're overreacting. It was just a little trip. We wanted to surprise you. Surprise me, I laughed. It was a hollow sound, nothing like joy. You surprised me 20 years ago when you told me I wasn't good enough for your brother. You've been surprising me ever since. But this is a whole new level. Mom, I turned. Derek was standing at the top of the stairs. He looked tired, rumpled, like he'd gotten on the first flight he could find and hadn't slept in 24 hours. Derek, I said. You came. I said I would. He walked down the stairs, his eyes fixed on his father. Dad. What happened? Mark looked at his son. He looked at me. He looked at the suitcases by the door. And for one brief, glorious moment, I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. Panic. Vivian, he said, his voice softer now. Can we talk about this privately? No, I said. We can't. I've given you 28 years of my life, and I'm done. I want you out of this house. I want you out of my life. And I want you to think very carefully about what you're going to say to a judge when I show them all those credit card alerts. You wouldn't. Try me. The room went silent. Susan was crying now. Tom was staring at the floor. Derek was standing between his parents with the weight of a broken family pressing down on his shoulders. And I was still holding Mark's sweater. I held it out to him. Take it. You're going to need it. He took it. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say anything. And that was when I knew. He wasn't sorry. He was just caught. I watched him walk out the door, his sister and her husband trailing behind him like sheep following a wolf. I watched his car pull out of the driveway. I watched it disappear around the corner. Derek put his hand on my shoulder. Mom, are you okay? I took a deep breath. I let it out slowly. No, I said. But I will be. I walked back into the study. I opened my laptop. I wrote everything down. The dates, the times, the conversations, the credit card alerts, the look on his face when he realized he'd been caught. I wrote it all. I knew this was only the beginning. I knew there was more to come. The fraud, the lies, the workplace betrayal I hadn't even uncovered yet. But I also knew something else. I knew I was going to survive this. I knew I was going to win. I closed the laptop. I poured myself another glass of water. I looked out the window at the street where Mark's car had just disappeared. And I smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a woman who had just started playing a very long game. Derek made tea. It was the first time he had ever made tea in my kitchen without being asked. He measured the leaves, poured the hot water, and let it steep for exactly 4 minutes. He had learned that from me. I had taught him that the right tea required patience, and I had taught him that the right response to a crisis required the same thing. He set the cup in front of me and sat down across the table. His face was pale, the same pale I had seen on his father's face just moments before. But Derek's pale was different. It was the pale of concern, not guilt. Of love, not shame. Tell me everything, he said. From the beginning. I told him. I told him about the business trip ending early. About the phone call. About the credit card alerts. About Miami. About Susan and Tom. About the $1,000 spent on a vacation I was never meant to know about. I don't understand, Derek said. Dad has his own money. He has his own card. Why would he use yours? Because he wanted me to find out, I said. The words came out before I had fully thought them through. But as soon as I spoke them, I knew they were true. He wanted me to see it. He wanted me to know what he was doing. Derek shook his head. That doesn't make sense. Why would he want you to find out? He could have used cash. He could have used his own card. He's not stupid. No, I agreed. He's not stupid. He's careless. There's a difference. He thought I wouldn't see it until after the trip was over. He thought I'd be too busy with work to check the alerts. He miscalculated. But even as I said it, something didn't sit right. Mark was a lawyer. He had spent 30 years managing details. He knew how credit cards worked. He knew that real-time alerts were automatic. He knew I checked my accounts every morning like a ritual. So why would he take the risk? Unless he wanted to be caught. The thought sat in my stomach like a stone. I pushed it away. There would be time for that later. Right now, I needed to focus on the practical things. I need you to be my witness, I told Derek. I need you to remember everything you saw tonight. The suitcases. The confrontation. The fact that he left without a fight. He didn't leave without a fight, Derek said. He left because he knew he was beaten. That's the same thing. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just walked out the door. That's not guilt, Derek. That's strategy. He's going to regroup. He's going to talk to his lawyer. He's going to come back fighting. Derek ran his hand through his hair. He had his father's hair, the same dark wave, the same way it fell across his forehead when he was tired. It was strange to see that familiar gesture on a face that was so young and full of pain. I don't know how to help you, he said. I don't know what to do. You're already helping me, I said. You're here. That's more than your father ever gave me. We sat in silence for a while. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I had never noticed how much noise Mark made until he was gone. The creak of his chair in the study. The click of his lighter when he stepped out onto the porch. The way he cleared his throat before he spoke, like he was warming up for a performance. He had always been a performer. I just hadn't wanted to see it. My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen. It was Patricia. I've filed the initial paperwork, she said. The separation is official. The courts will be involved now. But I need to know one thing. Are you sure about this? I've never been more sure about anything, I said. There's something else, Patricia said. I ran a background check on his accounts. The ones you don't have access to. There's a pattern of withdrawals over the past 6 months. Small amounts. Nothing that would trigger an alert. But they add up to nearly $15,000. Where did the money go? I don't know yet. But it didn't go to Miami. These withdrawals were made in cash. Paper trail ends at the bank lobby. $15,000. Cash. 6 months. My mind started racing. What had he been buying? What had he been hiding? This wasn't just about a vacation. This was something bigger. Something he had been planning for a long time. Keep digging, I told Patricia. Find out where that money went. And find out if there's more. I hung up and looked at Derek. Your father has been moving money out of our accounts. $15,000 over the past 6 months. Cash. Derek's face went white. That's not possible. He wouldn't, he would. He did. And I need to know why. Derek stood up and paced the kitchen. He was struggling with it. I understood. No one wants to believe their parent is capable of deception on that scale. But I had stopped believing in the myth of Mark a long time ago. I had just been too proud to admit it. We need to check the storage unit, Derek said suddenly. What storage unit? The one he rented 6 months ago. He told me about it. He said it was for some old files from the firm. I didn't think anything of it at the time. I stared at him. 6 months ago. That's when the withdrawals started. We grabbed our coats and left the house without another word. The storage facility was on the edge of town, a row of gray metal doors that looked identical in the dim streetlight. Derek had the key code. His father had given it to him, just in case. Just in case. It was almost too convenient. The door rolled up with a screech that echoed in the night. Inside, there were boxes. Stack after stack of boxes. I pulled the top one down and opened it. It was filled with papers. Bank statements, receipts, old tax returns. All of it in my name. I opened another box. More papers. Another. And then I found it. A folder labeled Retirement Fund, Vivian. I opened the folder. Inside were documents showing that my retirement account had been moved. Transferred. Over the past 6 months, Mark had systematically transferred money from our joint retirement fund into an account that was in his name only. The account was in a different bank. Different state. Different everything. How much? Derek asked. I flipped through the pages, my hands trembling. Over $200,000. The number hung in the air between us. $200,000. Money I had earned. Money I had saved. Money I had planned to use when I was too old to work anymore. He had stolen it. He had stolen my future. Why? Derek said. Why would he do this? I didn't have an answer. But I had a feeling. A gnawing suspicion that had been growing in my gut ever since I saw those credit card alerts. This wasn't about Susan. This wasn't about Miami. This was about something else entirely. Something he had been planning for a long time. We loaded the boxes into the car and drove home in silence. I couldn't look at Derek. I couldn't look at anything. I just stared out the window at the passing streetlights and tried to make sense of it all. When we got home, I went straight to the study. I opened my laptop and started a new document. I titled it Evidence. I started writing everything down. The credit card alerts. The cash withdrawals. The storage unit. The transferred retirement account. I wrote it all in excruciating detail. In the kitchen, Derek called his father. I heard the muffled sound of voices, low and tense. I didn't try to listen. I didn't need to. I knew what Mark would say. He would apologize. He would explain. He would promise to make it right. And none of it would be true. Derek came into the study a few minutes later. His face was red. He had been crying. He says it was a mistake. He says he was going to put it back. He says he needed the money for something important. What was it? He wouldn't tell me. He said he'd tell me when it was over. He said he had a plan. A plan. I laughed. It was a bitter laugh, the kind I had never heard from my own mouth before. He has a plan. Of course he does. And I'm supposed to just wait and see what happens. Derek shook his head. I don't know what to believe anymore. I know what to believe, I said. I believe he's been lying to me for 6 months. I believe he's been stealing from me for 6 months. And I believe that whatever he's planning, it's going to get worse before it gets better. My phone buzzed again. Patricia. I found something, she said. The account where he transferred the money. It's linked to a business. A shell company registered in his sister's name. I felt my stomach drop. Susan. Susan and Tom are listed as the principals. But the account is controlled by Mark. He's been funneling money through them to hide the trail. So he's been stealing from me and giving it to his sister. Not giving. Laundering. He's been moving money through her accounts to make it harder to trace. This is sophisticated, Vivian. This is planned. I thought about all those little comments Susan had made over the years. All those times she had called me too ambitious, too career-focused, too much for her precious brother. She wasn't just being cruel. She was covering something. She knew. She had known all along. Can you freeze the account? I asked. I already have. But it's going to create a ripple effect. He's going to know what you're doing. Good, I said. I want him to know. I hung up and turned to Derek. Your aunt has been helping him steal from me. She's been laundering the money. They've been doing this together. Derek stared at me. I could see the war in his eyes. The battle between his loyalty to his father and his love for me. It was a battle I didn't envy. But I also knew that he had to choose. And I had to give him the room to make that choice. Go to bed, I said. We'll talk more in the morning. Derek hesitated. Then he nodded and walked upstairs. I sat alone in the study, surrounded by the boxes from the storage unit. The evidence of my husband's betrayal spread out before me like a map of a country I no longer recognized. Mark had been planning this for months. He had been stealing from me, hiding money, using his sister as a shield. He had taken me for a fool. He had laughed at me behind my back while I was working 16-hour days to support us. He had smiled at me over dinner while he was draining my retirement account. And I had believed in him. I had believed in the hearts on the calendar. I had believed in the way he held my hand at my mother's funeral. I had believed in the man who shook so badly at our wedding that he almost dropped the ring. That man had never existed. That man was a fiction. A character he had created to make me trust him. And I had fallen for it. But I wasn't falling anymore. I opened my laptop and started writing again. Not just documenting. Planning. If Mark was playing a game, I was going to play it better. If he thought he could outsmart me, he was about to learn a very painful lesson. I pulled up the list of assets Patricia had given me. The house. The accounts. The investments. I started moving things. Not to hide them. Just to protect them. I transferred the savings into an account that only I could access. I liquidated the investments and moved the money to a safe place. I changed the passwords on everything. Every single account. Every single credit card. Every single portal. And then I called Patricia back. I want to file a police report. I want to press charges. Are you sure? Once we do that, there's no going back. I don't want to go back, I said. I want to go forward. And I want him to feel what it's like to lose everything. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'll make the call. But you need to be prepared for what comes next. This is going to be ugly. I've been through ugly, I said. And I've survived. I hung up and looked at the clock. It was 2 in the morning. I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. I couldn't stop thinking about the money, the lies, the betrayal. I couldn't stop thinking about the look on Mark's face when he realized I knew. He had underestimated me. That was his mistake. He had spent so long thinking of me as the wife, the mother, the loyal partner, that he had forgotten who I really was. I was the woman who had built a career from nothing. I was the woman who had survived every single challenge thrown my way. And I was the woman who had just discovered that her husband of 28 years was capable of anything. I walked over to the window and looked out at the street. The house across the road was dark. The streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement. It looked like any other night. But it wasn't. Nothing would ever be the same again. Mark would come back. I knew that. He would try to explain, to make things right, to win me back. He would use every trick he had learned in 30 years of lawyering. He would promise the moon and the stars. He would beg and cry and plead. And I would sit there and listen to all of it. And then I would tell him it was too late. Because it was. It had been too late the moment I heard that hesitation on the phone. The pause that told me he was building something false. The pause that told me everything I needed to know. I sat down on the couch and closed my eyes. I didn't sleep. I just rested. And I waited for the morning. The sun would rise and the next chapter would begin. The chapter where I fought back. The chapter where I won. But I had the feeling that winning was going to cost me more than I was ready to pay. The morning came too quickly. I had not slept. I had sat on the couch with my eyes closed, listening to the sounds of the house settling around me, and I had let my mind run through every possible scenario. Every lie Mark could tell. Every excuse he could manufacture. Every angle he could play. Derek came downstairs at 7. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His eyes were red-rimmed and his hair was a mess. He poured himself a cup of coffee and sat across from me without saying a word. Your father called again, I said. At 4 in the morning. What did he want? He wanted to explain. He said it wasn't what it looked like. He said he had a reason for everything. Derek stared at his coffee. Did you believe him? No, I said. Did you? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. My phone buzzed. Patricia. She was calling earlier than I expected. The police report has been filed. They're going to want to talk to you. They're going to want to see the evidence. I've sent them everything we have so far. That's fine, I said. I want them to see everything. There's something else, Patricia said. I found more transactions. Smaller ones. Dating back further than 6 months. He's been moving money for at least a year. Maybe longer. A year. At least. And it's not just through Susan. He's been using multiple accounts. Multiple names. Multiple banks. This is organized, Vivian. This is not a spur-of-the-moment thing. I felt the blood drain from my face. A year. He had been planning this for a year. He had been lying to me for a year. Every morning, he had kissed me goodbye and walked out the door with a secret in his pocket. Every night, he had come home and smiled at me and pretended everything was fine. Can you find out where all the money went? I asked. I'm trying. But it's complicated. He's been careful. He knows how to hide things. He's a lawyer, after all. I knew what that meant. He knew how to cover his tracks. He knew how to make things disappear. He had been using his training, his skills, his knowledge to steal from me. And he had been doing it for a year. Keep digging, I said. I want to know everything. I hung up and looked at Derek. It's been going on for a year. Maybe longer. He's been moving money through multiple accounts. Multiple names. He's been hiding it from me for a very long time. Derek set his coffee down. His hands were shaking. I don't know what to say. There's nothing to say. He did what he did. And now we're going to deal with it. I spent the morning organizing the evidence. The credit card alerts. The bank statements. The storage unit documents. The photos of the boxes and the folders and the receipts. I laid it all out on the dining room table, a puzzle that was slowly coming together. And then I saw it. A receipt I had missed before. It was folded into the back of one of the folders, almost hidden. A receipt for a safety deposit box at a bank 3 towns over. I had never seen it before. I had never known about any safety deposit box. I called Patricia. I need a court order for a safety deposit box. It's at the First National Bank in Westbrook. I'll get it, she said. But it might take a few days. I don't have a few days. I know. I'm doing everything I can. I hung up and stared at the receipt. What was in that box? More money, more documents, something even worse. I had no idea. But I knew I had to find out. Derek came over to look at the receipt. What do you think is in it? I don't know. But whatever it is, he didn't want me to see it. We spent the rest of the morning going through the rest of the boxes. There were more documents, more receipts, more evidence of a carefully constructed web of deception. But nothing that explained why. Nothing that told me what he was planning. At noon, there was a knock at the door. Derek answered it. It was Mark. He looked terrible. His face was haggard, his eyes were bloodshot, his clothes were wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He looked like a man who had been caught and was trying to figure out how to escape. Vivian, he said. Please. Let me explain. I stepped back from the table. I let him in. I wanted to hear what he had to say. Not because I believed him, but because I wanted to know what he would try. He walked into the living room and saw the boxes, the documents, the evidence spread out on the table. His face went pale. You've been busy, he said. I've been thorough, I said. Sit down. He sat. Derek stood by the door, his arms crossed, his face stony. I'm not going to lie to you, Mark began. I've been moving money. I have. But it's not what you think. Then what is it? He took a deep breath. I've been invested in something. A business deal. I didn't tell you because I wanted to surprise you. I wanted to make something for us. For our future. To surprise me, I repeated. You were going to surprise me by stealing $200,000 from my retirement account. It's not stealing. It's an investment. I was going to tell you when it was done. When the money had multiplied. I was going to give it all back. With interest. You were going to give it back. I laughed. It was a hollow sound. Mark, do you hear yourself? You took money from our joint account. You hid it in a shell company in your sister's name. You moved it through multiple banks. You lied to me. For a year. It was a business deal, he insisted. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't risk you finding out before it was finished. Before what was finished, he hesitated. That pause again. That same pause I had heard on the phone. The pause that meant he was building something false. I'm in trouble, he finally said. Financial trouble. I've been in trouble for a while. The investments I made, they went bad. I lost money. I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want you to know I failed. So you took my money to fix your mistakes. To fix our mistakes, he said. We're in this together, Vivian. We're partners. I did what I had to do to protect us. Protect us. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. You didn't protect us. You protected yourself. You protected your pride. And you used me to do it. You stole from me. You lied to me. And now you're standing in my living room trying to make me feel sorry for you. I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me. I'm trying to explain. There's no explanation for this. There's no excuse. You took money from our retirement account. You hid it. You lied. And you're still lying. Because I know about the safety deposit box. What's in it? His face went white. A real white this time. The color of fear. Nothing, he said. Don't lie to me. It's nothing. It's just papers. Old papers. Family things. Then you won't mind if I have a look. You can't. It's not your box. It's in my name. And I have a court order. Patricia is getting it now. So you might as well tell me what's in it. He stared at me. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then I remembered the $200,000. I remembered the lies. I remembered the year of deception. It's a will, he finally said. It's my mother's will. I didn't understand. Why would you hide your mother's will in a safety deposit box? He looked at Derek. Then back at me. Because it changes things. It changes everything. I sat back down. Explain. He took another deep breath. My mother's will divided her estate between me and Susan. But I was the executor. I had control. And I made some adjustments. Adjustments, I moved assets. Not illegal adjustments. Just adjustments. I gave Susan less than she was supposed to get. She didn't know. I told her the will was straightforward. That we split everything equally. But I took more. For myself. You stole from your own sister, stop saying stole. It wasn't stealing. It was managing. She wouldn't have known what to do with that money. She would have wasted it. I invested it. I grew it. And then I lost it. I stared at him. The magnitude of it was staggering. He had stolen from me. He had stolen from his sister. He had been lying to everyone. All for a year. All to cover his own mistakes. And the safety deposit box, I asked. What's in it? The original will. The one I altered. I didn't destroy it. I couldn't. I was planning to put it back eventually. I just needed more time. Time to do what? Time to fix things. Time to earn the money back. Time to make it right. I looked at Derek. He was staring at his father with a mixture of horror and pity. I understood. It was a lot to process. A lot to accept. Susan doesn't know, I said. She doesn't know you stole from her. She doesn't. And she can't find out. If she finds out, she'll ruin me. She'll sue me. She'll take everything. Everything you stole from her. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I stood up again. I walked to the door and opened it. Get out. Vivian, get out of my house. Now. He stood up. He looked at Derek. He looked at me. And then he walked out the door. I closed it behind him and leaned against it. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. I had never been so angry in my entire life. Derek walked over to me. Mom. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. But I wasn't fine. I was far from fine. My phone buzzed. Patricia. I got the court order. I'm on my way to the bank now. Don't bother, I said. I know what's in it. It's his mother's will. He altered it. He stole from his sister. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, do you have proof of the alteration? I have his confession. That's enough. It's not enough for a court. You need documents. You need evidence. You need to get that will. I looked at the door where Mark had just walked out. He was gone. But he wasn't gone forever. He would be back. He would try again. He would never stop trying. Get the will, I said. Whatever it takes. I hung up and turned to Derek. Your father is a thief. A liar. And a very, very good actor. And we're going to prove it. I walked back to the dining room table. I looked at all the evidence spread out before me. The receipts, the statements, the documents. It was all there. But it wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed the will. I needed to prove that he had stolen from Susan. I needed to show the world what kind of man he really was. And I needed to make sure that he never hurt anyone again. Patricia called me back an hour later. The court order was in her hand, and she was standing in the lobby of the First National Bank in Westbrook. But there was a problem. I need your authorization, she said. The bank manager is refusing to open the box without your signature. He says your husband's name is on the lease, but your name is on the court order, and there's a conflict. I'll sign it, I said. I'll sign anything. I'll send the documents to your phone. You need to sign them electronically and send them back. And then I'll need you to be here. In person. The bank wants to see you. I looked at the clock. It was 2 in the afternoon. Westbrook was 40 minutes away. I'll be there in an hour, I said. Derek insisted on driving. I didn't argue. My hands were still shaking, and I didn't trust myself behind the wheel. He drove fast, but carefully, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. We didn't talk. There was nothing left to say. The bank was a squat brick building on the main street of Westbrook. It looked like every other small-town bank I had ever seen. Quiet. Unassuming. The kind of place where people kept their secrets. Patricia was waiting for us in the lobby. She looked crisp and professional, her gray suit immaculate, her hair perfectly in place. She handed me the documents. I signed them without reading them. I trusted her. She had never given me a reason not to. The bank manager was a nervous man in his 50s with a thin mustache and sweaty palms. He led us to the vault and opened the box with a key he kept on a chain around his neck. The box was small, the size of a shoebox. He pulled it out and set it on a table in a private room. I'll wait outside, he said. Take your time. I opened the box. Inside were documents. Old documents. Yellowed with age. I pulled them out one by one. There were deeds, property records, birth certificates, marriage certificates. And at the bottom, folded neatly, was the will. I unfolded it and started reading. The language was formal, legal. The kind of language that made my eyes glaze over. But I forced myself to read every word. And then I saw it. A clause I didn't expect. A clause that changed everything. The will divided the estate between Mark and Susan. But there was a codicil. A handwritten edition at the end, signed by Mark's mother and witnessed by a notary. The codicil stated that a portion of the estate was to be set aside for a specific purpose. A trust. A trust for Mark's future children. But the trust wasn't for Derek. The trust was for a child I didn't know existed. I read the codicil again. And again. And again. The words blurred together. My hands started shaking. I had to sit down. Vivian, Patricia asked. What is it? I handed her the document. She read it. Her face went pale. There's a child, she said. There's another child. Derek took the document from her. He read it. His face went pale too. This doesn't make sense. I'm an only child. I've always been an only child. Not according to this, Patricia said. The codicil names a beneficiary. A woman. Margaret. And a child. A son. Samuel. I stared at the wall. My mind was spinning. A child. Mark had another child. A son. Samuel. He had been hiding this for how long? Decades. The codicil was dated 18 years ago. 18 years. He had been lying to me for 18 years. This is impossible, I said. I would have known. I would have sensed something. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. There had been signs. There had always been signs. The trips he took alone. The phone calls he took in the other room. The way he flinched whenever I mentioned having another child. I had thought he was just tired. I had thought he was just stressed. I had made excuses for him. I had given him the benefit of the doubt. And he had been hiding a son from me. Is there an address? I asked. A phone number, anything? Patricia flipped through the documents. There's a name. Margaret Sullivan. And an address. It's in the next state over. Let me see. I took the document. The address was in a town I had never heard of. But the name was familiar. Margaret. I had heard that name before. Mark had mentioned it once, years ago. He had said she was an old friend from law school. He had said they had lost touch. He had lied. Oh, we need to go there, I said. We need to find her. Vivian, that's a 6-hour drive, Patricia said. You're not in any condition, I don't care. I need to see her. I need to know the truth. Derek put his hand on my shoulder. Mom, let me call her first. Let me talk to her. We need to be smart about this. I wanted to argue. I wanted to get in the car and drive and demand answers. But he was right. I was exhausted. I was angry. I was not thinking clearly. Call her, I said. But I want to listen. We went back to the car. Derek pulled out his phone and dialed the number on the document. It rang 3 times. Then a woman answered. Hello, Margaret Sullivan, Derek asked. My name is Derek. I'm Mark's son. I'm calling about, he paused. He didn't know what to say. Neither did I. About the will. I whispered. About the will, Derek repeated. I found your name in a document. I was hoping we could talk. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Margaret said, he told you about me. He didn't tell me anything, Derek said. I found out on my own. I'm with my mother. We need to know the truth. Another long silence. Then Margaret said, I think it's time we talked. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our towns. It was a compromise. I didn't want to compromise. I wanted to drive there and demand answers. But Derek was right. We needed to be smart. The coffee shop was a small place off the highway, the kind of place that served mediocre coffee and stale pastries. We got there an hour before Margaret. I ordered a cup of tea and sat in a booth near the window. Derek sat across from me. Patricia was on her way back to the city. She had other cases to handle, but she promised to stay in touch. I stared out the window and watched the traffic. My mind was racing. I had spent the past few days discovering that my husband was a liar, a thief, and a cheat. And now I was discovering that he had a secret family. A whole other life I had never known about. Why hadn't I seen it? Why hadn't I noticed the signs? There were so many signs. But I had refused to see them. I had been too busy, too focused on my own career, too willing to believe the best in him. The door opened. A woman walked in. She was about my age, maybe a little younger. She had gray hair and tired eyes. She carried herself with the weariness of someone who had been through a lot. "Vivian," she said. I stood up. "Margaret." We shook hands. Her grip was firm. I liked her immediately, which made everything worse. It would have been easier to hate her. She sat down in the booth. Derek introduced himself. She looked at him with a strange expression. Recognition. Longing. Regret. "You look like him," she said. "You look just like your father." I felt something twist in my chest. "I didn't know about you," I said. "I didn't know about Samuel." Margaret nodded slowly. "He didn't tell you." "He didn't tell anyone. He made me promise not to tell." "Why?" She took a deep breath. "Because he was ashamed. Because he was young and stupid and he made a mistake. We were in law school together. We fell in love. But his mother didn't approve. She wanted him to marry someone else. Someone with money. Someone who could help his career." "Me," I said. "She wanted him to marry me." Margaret nodded. "She thought I was beneath him. She threatened to cut him off if he stayed with me. And he couldn't handle that. He was too dependent on her. Too weak. So he left you." "He left me. And then he found out I was pregnant. He came back. He wanted me to get an abortion. I refused. So he made a deal with his mother. He would marry you. He would have the life she wanted for him. And in return, she would set up a trust for Samuel. A trust that would provide for him. A trust that would keep him quiet." I felt the ground shift beneath me. All those years. All those years of marriage. He had never loved me. He had married me because his mother told him to. He had stayed with me because it was convenient. He had used me. "You knew he was married?" Derek asked. "All these years, you knew." "I knew," Margaret said. "I hated it. I hated myself for accepting it. But I didn't have a choice. I had a child to raise. I had to take what he offered." "What did he offer?" I asked. "Money. Regular payments. Enough to keep us comfortable. But never enough to let me forget that I was his dirty secret." I looked at Derek. He was staring at the table. His face was unreadable. "Samuel," I said. "Where is he now?" "He's grown," Margaret said. "He's a teacher. He doesn't know about any of this." "I never told him." "You never told him who his father was." I couldn't. I was ashamed. I didn't want him to know he was a mistake. I reached across the table and took her hand. He wasn't a mistake. He was the result of a series of mistakes. But he wasn't a mistake. Neither were you. Margaret started crying. I didn't stop her. I held her hand and let her cry. Derek stood up. "I need some air." He walked out of the coffee shop. I watched him go. I knew he was struggling. I didn't blame him. "Margaret," I said. "I need to know everything. Every detail. Every lie. Every secret." She nodded. She wiped her eyes. And she started talking. She told me about the years of silence. The years of waiting. The years of hoping that Mark would leave me and come back to her. She told me about the payments that came like clockwork, every month, never late, never early. She told me about the calls he made to Samuel, disguised as a family friend, checking in, asking questions, never revealing who he really was. He loved him, Margaret said. He loved Samuel. In his own way. He just didn't have the courage to claim him. "Did he love you?" She was silent for a long moment. "I don't know. I don't think he knew how." I thought about all the years I had spent with Mark. All the years I had believed in him. All the years I had loved him. And I realized that he had never loved me the way I loved him. He had loved me the way you love a tool. Something useful. Something that made your life easier. I let go of Margaret's hand. I stood up. "I need to go," I said. "I need to think." She nodded. She understood. I walked out of the coffee shop and found Derek leaning against the car. He looked up at me. His eyes were red. "Mom," he said. "What are we going to do?" I didn't have an answer. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let Mark get away with this. Not the money. Not the lies. Not the other family. I was going to take everything from him. I'm going to destroy him, I said. And I'm going to enjoy every second of it. We drove home in silence. Derek kept his eyes on the road, his jaw tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I stared out the window and watched the miles pass. The landscape blurred into streaks of green and gray, and my mind blurred with it. I kept seeing Margaret's face, the way she had looked at me with such weary resignation. She had known for 30 years what I had only just discovered. My husband was a fraud. Our marriage was a transaction. Our life together was built on a foundation of lies. I thought about Samuel, a teacher, a grown man with a life of his own. He had never known the truth. He had grown up believing his father was a stranger. And Mark had let him believe it. Mark had chosen to hide him, to pay him off, to pretend he didn't exist. What kind of man did that? The answer was simple. A man who had never been capable of real love. A man who saw people as tools, as stepping stones, as pieces on a chessboard. I had been a piece. Margaret had been a piece. Derek had been a piece. We were all just part of a game he was playing. Derek pulled into the driveway. The house looked the same as it always did. The same white siding. The same green shutters. The same flower boxes I had planted with my own hands. But it didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage. A set designed for a play that had already ended. We walked inside. I went straight to the study. I opened my laptop and started writing. The document I had started the night before was growing longer and longer. Every new discovery was a new entry. Every new lie was a new paragraph. I was building a case. A case against my husband. A case that would destroy him. Derek came in with 2 cups of tea. He set one in front of me and sat down across the desk. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking about the will," I said. "The codicil. The trust. That's the key." He altered his mother's will to keep Samuel a secret. He stole from Susan to cover his own mistakes. And he stole from me to keep the whole thing going. "Susan doesn't know about the will," Derek said. "She doesn't know he altered it." "No. But she's going to find out. I'm going to make sure of it." Derek stared at me. "You're going to tell her." "I'm going to let her find out. There's a difference. I'm not going to protect him anymore. I'm not going to cover for him. He made his choices, and now he has to live with them." I picked up my phone. I didn't call Patricia. I called Susan. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Vivian, why are you calling me?" "I need to see you," I said. "It's important. It's about Mark." There was a pause. Then she said, "I don't think that's a good idea." "Susan, listen to me. I know about the will. I know about the codicil. I know about Samuel." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could hear her breathing, shallow and quick. She knew. She had always known. "What do you want?" she finally asked. "I want to meet. I want to tell you what I know. And I want you to hear it from me before you hear it from anyone else." She agreed. We met at a diner on the edge of town, a neutral place where no one knew us. Susan was already there when I walked in. She looked nervous. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee cup, and she was staring at the table like it held all the answers. I sat down across from her. I ordered a cup of tea. I waited until the waitress left before I spoke. "I found the original will," I said. "The one your mother wrote. The one Mark altered. He changed it. He gave himself more than he was supposed to get. And he took money from you." Susan's face went pale. "I don't believe you." "I have proof. I have the original document. I have the codicil. I have everything." She stared at me. I could see the war in her eyes. The part of her that wanted to believe me and the part of her that couldn't accept that her brother had betrayed her. "Why?" she asked. "Why would he do that?" "He needed money," I said. "He was in debt. He lost money on bad investments. He was trying to fix his mistakes. And he used you. He used me. He used everyone." Susan took a long drink of her coffee. Her hands were shaking. "He knew," she said. "He knew I would have helped him. If he had asked, I would have helped him." "I know. But he didn't ask. He just took. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. I reached into my bag and pulled out copies of the documents. I slid them across the table. Susan picked them up and started reading. Her face shifted through a range of emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, and finally a cold, hard resolve. I'm going to sue him, she said. I'm going to take everything he has. You can try, I said. But he's already taken everything. He stole from me. He stole from you. And he used the money to hide his secret. Samuel, she said. I didn't know about Samuel. I never knew. He was your mother's secret too. She set up the trust. She paid for his silence. She made Mark marry me to keep the family respectable. Susan was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I hated you. All those years, I hated you. I thought you were the reason he was different. I thought you were the one who changed him. No, I said. He was always like this. I was just the one who didn't see it. I left Susan at the diner. She had a lot to process. So did I. But I was starting to feel something I hadn't felt in days. Control. I was taking back control. Piece by piece. Step by step. I drove home and called Patricia. I need you to do something. I need you to subpoena Mark's financial records. All of them. Every account. Every transaction. I need to know how deep this goes. I'll get it done, she said. But it's going to take time. I don't have time. He's going to try to hide things. He's going to try to cover his tracks. I need to move faster. There was a pause. Then Patricia said, I know a forensic accountant. He's good. He's expensive. But he can find things that no one else can. Get him. Whatever he costs, get him. The forensic accountant was a man named Richard. He was in his 70s, with white hair and wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of intense focus that came from a lifetime of staring at numbers. He came to the house 2 days later, carrying a briefcase full of documents and a laptop that looked like it had seen better days. Show me everything, he said. I laid it all out for him. The bank statements. The credit card alerts. The storage unit documents. The safety deposit box records. The trust documents. The codicil. Everything. Richard looked through it all with the speed of someone who had been doing this for decades. He made notes. He asked questions. He didn't miss a single detail. Your husband has been moving money for a long time, he said. Not just a year. Not just 2. This goes back at least a decade. Maybe more. A decade. Look at this, he said, pointing to a transaction on an old bank statement. This is from 12 years ago. A transfer to an offshore account. It's small. Only a few $1,000s. But it's a pattern. He's been doing this for years. I stared at the document. 12 years. He had been stealing from me for 12 years. Before Derek had even graduated from high school. Before my mother had died. Before so many of the moments I thought were real. Why, I asked. Why would he need to do this? Richard shrugged. Some people are just greedy. They have enough, but they always want more. Your husband is one of those people. Can you trace it all? I can try. But it's going to take time. He's been careful. He's been hiding things in layers. But I'm good at finding things. I left Richard in the study with his laptop and his documents. I walked into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I drank it slowly. I let the cold water settle my nerves. Derek came in. He had been out for a walk. His face was flushed from the cold air. How's it going? He's been stealing from me for 12 years, I said. Maybe longer. He's been hiding money in offshore accounts. He's been using Susan to launder it. He's been paying for a secret family. Derek sat down. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. My phone buzzed. It was Mark. I didn't answer. I let it ring. He called 3 more times. I didn't answer any of them. Finally, he sent a text. Please. We need to talk. I know you found out about Samuel. Let me explain. I deleted the text. I didn't want to hear his explanations. I didn't want to hear his excuses. I was done listening to him. Richard emerged from the study an hour later. His face was grim. I found something you need to see. He led me back to the study. On the screen was a document. A transfer document. It showed that Mark had moved a significant amount of money from our joint account to a private account in the Cayman Islands. The amount was 6 figures. The date was 3 months ago. He's been preparing, Richard said. He's been getting ready to leave. To disappear. He was planning to take all of this and run. I stared at the screen. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. So that was it. That was the endgame. He wasn't just stealing from me. He was planning to abandon me. To leave me with nothing. To start a new life somewhere else. I need to stop him, I said. Oh, we already have, Richard said. I froze the accounts. He can't access them. He can't touch the money. Can you prove that he was planning to leave? I can. The transfer pattern is clear. He was liquidating assets. He was moving money offshore. It's a classic pattern of a person preparing to flee. I felt a small measure of satisfaction. He had been outsmarted. He had been caught. But I knew he wouldn't go quietly. He would fight. He would try to find another way. And that was fine. I was ready to fight back. I called Patricia. We have proof. He was planning to leave. He was liquidating assets. He was moving money offshore. Good, she said. That's all we need. I'll file a motion to freeze all of his accounts. I'll file a motion to prevent him from leaving the country. He's not going anywhere. I hung up. I looked at Richard. Thank you. I'll take it from here. He nodded. He packed up his laptop and his documents and left. I was alone in the study again. Alone with the evidence. Alone with the knowledge that my husband had been planning to abandon me. Alone with the knowledge that he had never loved me. But I was also alone with the knowledge that I had won. I had stopped him. I had taken away his power. I had exposed his secrets. And I was just getting started. I sat down at the desk. I opened my laptop. I started writing again. The document was getting longer. It was getting stronger. It was building toward something. A conclusion. A final reckoning. And when it was done, I would have everything I needed to end this once and for all. Derek appeared in the doorway. What's next? I looked at him. I smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. Next, I said, I make sure he never hurts anyone again. The legal machinery was moving faster than I had expected. Patricia called me the next morning with news that made my coffee taste sweeter. The judge had granted the emergency motion. All of Mark's accounts were frozen. He was barred from leaving the country. And he had been served with a restraining order that prevented him from coming within 500 feet of me or the house. He's furious, Patricia said. He called my office 3 times this morning. He left messages that I can't repeat in polite company. I'm sure he did, I said. What's he going to do? He's going to fight. He's going to hire the best lawyer he can afford. But his assets are frozen, so he can't afford much. He's going to have to rely on his sister. Susan isn't going to help him. She knows about the will. Patricia was quiet for a moment. I didn't tell her. I assumed you did. I did. She knows he altered the will. She knows he stole from her. She's not going to lift a finger to help him. Then he's in trouble. He's going to have to find another way. And I wouldn't put it past him to try something desperate. I knew what that meant. Mark was cornered. He had been caught. He had been exposed. And he had nothing left to lose. That made him dangerous. I spent the morning going over the evidence again. The forensic accountant had done a thorough job. He had traced the money through layers of accounts, through shell companies, through Susan's involvement, through a decade of careful deception. The paper trail was complete. The case was airtight. But there was still something missing. Something I couldn't quite put my finger on. The pieces were there, but they didn't fit together the way I wanted them to. There was a gap. A hole in the story. I called Patricia back. I need to talk to Mark. Face to face. Vivian, that's not a good idea. You have a restraining order. I want to know why he did it. I want to hear him say it. I want to see his face when he admits that he never loved me. Patricia was silent for a long moment. Then she said, if you do this, you need to be careful. He's not going to be reasonable. He's going to try to manipulate you. I know. But I need to do this. I need closure. She agreed to arrange a meeting. It would be supervised. There would be a mediator present. It would be in a neutral location, somewhere public, somewhere safe. I agreed to everything. I didn't care about the conditions. I just needed to see him. The meeting was set for the next afternoon. A conference room in Patricia's office building. The mediator was a retired judge named Harris, a stern-faced man with silver hair and kind eyes. He sat at the head of the table and watched us both with the patience of someone who had seen it all before. Mark walked in looking like a shadow of the man I had married. His face was gaunt. His eyes were hollow. His suit was rumpled, like he had been sleeping in it. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger. Shame. Something else. Something I didn't want to identify. "Vivian," he said. "Thank you for agreeing to this." "I didn't agree to this for you," I said. "I agreed to this for me. I want to know why. Why you did it. Why you lied. Why you stole. Why you made me believe in something that wasn't real." He sat down across from me. He folded his hands on the table. He looked at the judge, then at Patricia, then back at me. "I don't know where to start," he said. "Start at the beginning," I said. "Start with Margaret." He flinched at the name. Good. I wanted him to flinch. "I met her in law school," he said. "We were together for 3 years. I loved her. I really did. But my mother didn't approve. She said Margaret wasn't good enough. She said I needed to marry someone with connections. Someone who could help my career. So you married me. I married you because my mother told me to. But I didn't hate you, Vivian. I thought I could make it work. I thought I could love you. I thought you would never find out. But I did find out. You found out because I made mistakes. I was careless. I thought I could control everything. I thought I could keep all the pieces separate. But I couldn't. And now everything is falling apart." I felt a cold anger rising in my chest. "You stole from me. You stole from your sister. You had a child from me for 18 years. And you're sitting here telling me that you thought you could make it work. I know it sounds terrible. I know it sounds unforgivable. But I never meant to hurt anyone. I was trying to protect everyone. I was trying to keep everything together." "You were trying to protect yourself," I said. "You were trying to keep your secrets. You were trying to keep your lies. You never cared about anyone but yourself." He didn't deny it. He just sat there, staring at the table, his face unreadable. Why did you transfer the money to the Cayman Islands?" I asked. "Were you planning to leave me to disappear?" He looked up. His eyes met mine. For the first time, I saw something like honesty in them. "Yes," he said. "I was planning to leave. I was going to take the money and disappear. I was going to start a new life somewhere else. I was going to leave everything behind." "Everything?" I asked. "You were going to leave Derek." "Your own son," he didn't answer. That was answer enough. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. I walked to the window and looked out at the city below. The cars, the buildings, the people. All those lives. All those secrets. All those lies. "You're a coward," I said. "You've always been a coward. You couldn't stand up to your mother. You couldn't stand up to your sister. You couldn't stand up to anyone. So you lied. You cheated. You stole. And now you're sitting here trying to make me feel sorry for you." "I'm not trying to make you feel sorry for me," he said. "I'm trying to explain. I'm trying to make you understand." "I don't want to understand. I don't want to explain. I want you to look me in the eye and tell me that you never loved me. That our marriage was a lie. That everything we built together was just a game to you." He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "I did love you, Vivian. In my own way. I just couldn't love you the way you deserved." That was the truth. The first real truth he had told me in years. I walked back to the table. I sat down. I looked at him across the table, this man I had spent nearly 3 decades with. This man I had built a life with. This man I had trusted. "I'm going to destroy you," I said. "I'm going to take everything. The house. The money. The retirement fund. Everything. You're going to lose it all. And then you're going to prison." He didn't flinch. He just nodded. "I know. I deserve it. You deserve worse." The mediator cleared his throat. "I think we've made enough progress for today." Patricia agreed. She stood up and signaled for me to leave. I walked out of the room without looking back. I didn't want to see his face anymore. Derek was waiting for me in the lobby. He looked anxious. "How did it go?" I told him I was going to destroy him, I said. And I meant it. We drove home in silence. I was exhausted. The meeting had drained me in ways I hadn't expected. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. I had done it. I had confronted him. I had made him admit the truth. That night, I sat in the study and went over the evidence again. The forensic accountant's report was detailed. The paper trail was complete. The case was airtight. But there was something else. Something I had noticed, but hadn't fully processed. A pattern in the transactions. Small amounts, withdrawn at regular intervals, always on the same day of the month. They weren't large enough to be suspicious. But they were consistent. I called Richard, the forensic accountant. What are these small withdrawals, the ones that happen every month? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I was going to ask you about those. They look like regular payments. Maybe a pension. Maybe an annuity. But they're not going to a bank account. They're going to a person. A person. I traced them to a name. Samuel. The withdrawals are made to an account in Samuel's name. Mark has been making regular payments to his son for years. Not just the trust. These are separate. These are personal. I stared at the document. Mark had been making payments to Samuel. Regular payments. Monthly. Like clockwork. Not just the trust. Personal payments. Why? I asked. Why would he make personal payments to Samuel? Maybe he wanted to support him. Maybe he wanted to stay in touch. Maybe he wanted to make sure his son knew he was there. I thought about what Margaret had said. Mark had called Samuel. He had checked in on him. He had tried to be a part of his life. Even if he couldn't claim him. He had loved his son. In his own way. He had loved him enough to make sure he was taken care of. But he hadn't loved me. He had never loved me. I closed the laptop. I didn't want to see any more. Derek came into the study. Mom, you need to rest. You've been going nonstop for days. I nodded. He was right. I needed rest. I needed to sleep. I needed to think. But I couldn't stop thinking about Samuel. This man I had never met. This man who had grown up without a father. This man who was Mark's other secret. I needed to meet him. I needed to see his face. I needed to know who he was. And I needed to tell him the truth. I found Samuel on a Thursday afternoon. The address from the trust documents led me to a small house on a quiet street in a town I had never visited before. The house was modest but well kept, with a garden in the front and a swing set in the back. I sat in the car for a long time before I got out, watching the front door and trying to gather my courage. Meeting Margaret had been hard. Meeting Samuel would be harder. He didn't know who I was. He didn't know what his father had done. He was innocent in all of this, and I was about to walk into his life and turn it upside down. But he deserved to know. He deserved the truth. It wasn't his fault that he had been born into this mess. And it wasn't fair for him to spend his whole life believing a lie. I walked up the path and knocked on the door. A man answered. He was in his late 30s, with Mark's eyes and Mark's smile. I saw him and felt my breath catch in my throat. He looked so much like his father. The same way of holding his head. The same way of standing with his weight on one foot. Can I help you? He asked. Are you Samuel? I asked. He looked confused. Yes. Who are you? My name is Vivian. I'm the wife of the man who is your father. His face went pale. He stared at me for a moment, his mouth open, his eyes wide. Then he stepped back and let me inside. The house was warm and comfortable. There were photos on the walls, pictures of a woman I assumed was his wife, children I assumed were his kids. A normal life. A happy life. A life that was about to be shattered. I don't understand, he said. My mother told me my father was dead. She lied, I said. She lied to protect you. And to protect herself. But I think you deserve to know the truth. I sat down on his couch. I told him everything. I told him about Mark. I told him about the marriage, the lies, the money, the will, the trust. I told him about the payments Mark had been making to him for years, the regular withdrawals that had gone to an account in his name. I thought that money was from my grandmother, Samuel said. My mother told me it was from my grandmother. She said my grandmother had set up a trust for me when I was born. Your grandmother did set up a trust, I said. But your father has been adding to it. He's been paying you money every month for years. He's been watching over you. He just couldn't admit it. Samuel sat down heavily in a chair. He looked like a man who had just been hit by a truck. Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he just tell me who he was? Because he was afraid, I said. He was afraid of his mother. He was afraid of his sister. He was afraid of losing everything he had built. He made a lot of bad choices. And you were the one who paid the price. Samuel was quiet for a long time. He stared at the floor, his hands clasped in front of him, his face unreadable. I waited. I didn't push him. He needed time to process what I had told him. Finally, he looked up. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care? Because I know what it's like to be lied to, I said. I know what it's like to spend years believing something that isn't true. And I couldn't let you go on living a lie. He nodded slowly. He stood up and walked to the window. He stared out at the garden, at the swing set where his children had played. I have a family, he said. I have a wife and 2 kids. They don't know any of this. Then you need to decide what to tell them, I said. You need to decide what kind of story you want them to believe. How do I do that? How do I tell them that I'm not who they think I am? You tell them the truth, I said. And you let them decide what to do with it. That's all any of us can do. I stood up. I walked to the door. I turned back to look at him one last time. You have a chance to be better than your father, I said. Don't waste it. I walked out of his house and got back into my car. I sat there for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, my heart pounding in my chest. I had done it. I had told him the truth. I had given him the gift of knowing. Now it was up to him what to do with it. I drove home. The house was quiet when I got there. Derek was in the kitchen, making dinner. He looked up when I walked in. How did it go? He was surprised, I said. But he's going to be okay. He has a good life. A good family. He's not going to let this destroy him. Derek nodded. He turned back to the stove. Patricia called. She said the hearing is set for next week. The judge is going to make a final ruling on the divorce and the financials. Good, I said. I'm ready for it to be over. The hearing was held in a small courtroom downtown. Mark was there, sitting with his lawyer. Susan was there too. She had decided not to support her brother. She had decided to support me instead. It was strange, having her on my side after all these years. But I didn't question it. I just accepted it. Patricia presented the evidence. The credit card alerts. The bank statements. The storage unit documents. The safety deposit box records. The will. The codicil. The trust documents. The forensic accountant's report. The payments to Samuel. All of it was laid out before the judge. Mark didn't deny any of it. He sat in his chair with his head down, his shoulders slumped, his face expressionless. He had no fight left in him. He had already lost. The judge ruled in my favor. The divorce was granted. The house was mine. The retirement fund was mine. The bank accounts were mine. Mark was ordered to repay the money he had stolen, plus interest and legal fees. And he was ordered to undergo counseling for his behavior. You've caused a great deal of damage, the judge said to Mark. Not just financial damage. Emotional damage. You've hurt people who trusted you. People who loved you. And you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. Mark didn't respond. He just sat there, staring at the floor. After the hearing, I walked out of the courtroom. Derek was waiting for me in the hallway. He put his arm around my shoulder. It's over, he said. It's finally over. I nodded. It's over. But it wasn't really over. Not for me. I still had to rebuild. I still had to heal. I still had to figure out who I was without Mark, without the lies, without the life I had thought I was living. I went home. I walked through the house and looked at all the things I had accumulated over the years. The furniture. The paintings. The photographs. They all seemed different now. They all seemed like part of a life that belonged to someone else. I walked into the study. I opened my laptop. I looked at the document I had been writing for the past few weeks, the document that chronicled every lie, every theft, every secret. I didn't need to write anymore. The story was over. I closed the document. I closed my laptop. I sat there in the quiet of the study and let myself feel. For the first time in weeks, I let myself cry. Not for Mark. Not for the marriage. I cried for myself. For the years I had wasted. For the love I had given to someone who didn't deserve it. But I also felt something else. Relief. Freedom. The weight of the lies had been lifted from my shoulders. I stood up. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It was a new beginning. Derek came into the study. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. I'm better than fine. He smiled. What are you going to do now? I thought about it. There were a lot of things I could do. Travel. Work. Volunteer. Spend time with Derek and whatever family he might have in the future. Rebuild my life, piece by piece. I'm going to live, I said. I'm going to do all the things I never had the time or the energy to do. I'm going to be happy. He hugged me. I hugged him back. We stood there in the study, the two of us, and I realized that I wasn't alone. I had my son. I had my friends. I had my life. And that was enough. The next day, I went back to work. It felt good to have something to do, something to focus on. My colleagues were supportive. They had heard about the divorce, the scandal, the court case. They didn't ask questions. They just offered their support. I threw myself into my work. I took on new clients. I traveled to meetings. I built my career back up from the ground. It wasn't easy, but it was satisfying. I was doing something I was good at. I was doing something I loved. In the evenings, I came home to my quiet house. I read books. I watched movies. I learned to cook new recipes. I started doing all the things I had put off for years. The house started to feel like home again. Not Mark's home. Mine. A few weeks later, I received a letter. It was from Samuel. He had written to thank me for telling him the truth. He had talked to his wife. He had told his children. They had decided to accept it. They had decided to move forward. I don't know if I'll ever forgive my father, he wrote. But I'm grateful that I know the truth. And I'm grateful to you for telling me. You didn't have to do that. You could have let me go on living in ignorance. But you didn't. You gave me a gift. And I will never forget it. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in the top drawer of my desk. I thought about Mark. I wondered what he was doing, where he was living, whether he was okay. But I didn't feel sorry for him. He had made his choices. He had to live with them. I thought about Margaret. I wondered if she was okay. I wondered if she had found peace. I thought about sending her a letter, letting her know that I didn't blame her. But I decided not to. Some things were better left unsaid. I thought about Susan. She had reached out after the hearing, apologized for the years of resentment. I had accepted her apology. We had agreed to put the past behind us. It wasn't easy, but it was a start. And I thought about myself. I thought about all the years I had spent being someone else's wife, someone else's partner, someone else's support system. I had spent so much time taking care of other people that I had forgotten how to take care of myself. I wasn't going to make that mistake again. I walked out into the garden. The flowers were in bloom. The sun was warm on my face. I breathed in the smell of the soil and the grass and the life all around me. It was a new day. It was a new beginning. And I was ready for it.